Gotta rewire the lamp and the motor. So this motor has the side bracket on it. I'll take these two screws off, and then on the other side our nameplate is also riveted on either side of the motor housing, so we'll have to lift that off carefully. And if I can get the rivets to lift out, then I'll put this back on, and if I can't, it just won't get the plate put back on it. Yeah, these are very fine spiral punch rivets, so that one came out. Maybe we'll get to put that back on. There. On the other end here, a little grip and an untwist, the other rivet came out, so we should be able to put our label back on. That's always a nice touch. So, alright. Need to get our pulley off. So, loosen the screw. Oh. Shaft is a bit gunky there, so I'll polish the end with a, there we go. Alright, that came off. This is very gunky. It must have had a rubber belt on it that was melted at some point. So, have to clean that. And then can't forget to take our brushes out. And that brush cap was a bit shorter than I expected, but the cap and spring are here. And there comes the brush. That brush has got more than enough life left in it. So I'm gonna get our other cap and spring out. I'll get the other brush out. Alright, so with our brushes out and the pulley off, this motor has the nuts that hold it together, so I'm just going to put my thumb on, and I need a slightly larger screwdriver. Oh, there it is. They usually catch really nicely on the side here, and I'm going to actually turn this upside down and finish loosening this, and that way when it's loose and the screw comes out, thought I was going to get the nut to fall right out. I'm still not very good at that. When you do it right, the nut falls right out the side instead of into the motor, but try it again. Loosen the screw, turn this upside down, and finish pulling the screw, and then that nut fell out the bottom. So success on that side. Now just gotta work this apart. There we go. Here we are. Okay. Make sure we got the nuts out. There's the rotor. This doesn't look too terrible. I'll still clean this up and polish it up since we got the rotor out. Still need to pull our coil out so that we can replace the wire load into it. Here we go. Okay. So these two connections are the ones that go, oh wait, no, this connection and that connection go out of the body. Make sure you trim the right ones, because the two that connect into the brushes here, we certainly don't want to have to redo. And these tend to be in pretty good shape because they can be insulated with fabric and don't need as much, and because they don't have to be as flexible over time, they tend to survive better. So we'll get some fresh wire on that, and then we'll finish cleaning this and putting it back together. Alright, I have 2 new wires on the coil, and I took care when I put the wires on, they're separate wires so I can tug them to even them out. And I thought about the way that this coil would fit when I was putting them in, and I've already spotted a thing that I don't like about the way this fits. I want this wire to go around and behind the brush holder. So when I go to put this in, I'm going to make sure that this wire is behind the brush holder, and this other coil wire is going to come up and make a little fold. I'm going to tug the two wires gently and watch inside there while I get this in place. All right, slipped that in. That wire is out of the way. There, and this one, okay. And this whole coil rotates lightly in here. So I'm going to make sure that's aligned with the holes for the pins, and then it's going to be time to put our rotor back in. When I pulled this out, there was only one washer, one loose washer on the fan end here. When I pulled this out, there were 3 washers on the inside end, but you'll see how the brushes were riding on the very edge of the rotor here. So I'm going to try slipping this in and fitting it with 2 washers. And I don't feel any binding, and that's going to center the brushes, move the brushes a little bit on our commutator here. So I'm going to do that when I assemble this, but first I need to take a minute to clean that commutator a bit. Clean this up. 2 washers on the commutator end. Slip it straight in. Take our screws, just slip them through here to make sure that the holes are lined up to put the nut on. And then we've got 2 more of these fiber washers for the other side here, so we still put our 4 washers back in, and then make sure that we rotate the other cover to match. So we've got the 2 screws on this side and the 2 rivet holes on the other side. This should slide together more easily than that. I'm going to work on that a bit more until I get it pushed together. Now, with the 2 halves close enough together, and just like every other motor, keep checking that it spins freely as you're assembling it. And I'm going to get my tweezers here. There. Tweezers with one nut on, and then we'll push our other bolt through and get our other nut in place. Now with both nuts in place, we can start tightening the two halves together. It's turning pretty okay. I'm actually going to get my rubber mallet and just tap on either side of the cracks in the casing there, and that little tap was enough to let it settle in and realign, and then we can tighten a little bit more, and this is still spinning freely, so we're all good with that. And remember, I put two separate wires on the motor because that makes it easier to arrange them inside the housing. I'm going to get a piece of shrink wrap and I'm going to put a shrink on the two until they and stick it into the motor there, and that will hold these at the same length very nicely. But that's the motor rewired. We'll be able to put the plate back on and put the bracket back on and move on to rewiring the lamp. So brushes are clean, they're going to get reinserted, and this has these really big brush springs, so make sure we get those in and snug the caps up, and check our curve on our brushes to make sure that they're going to ride on the match the curve of the commutator. Okay. And then our bracket. And the two bracket screws. There they are. See, it's kind of hard to tell where that bracket was tightened on, but we'll just give it a guess and check it when we refit it to the machine. I'm going to hang this over the bench and tap those rivets in.